I'm going to read you today the first book in Toby's Trucks. It's called Tales of Toby, the Truck Dispatcher. This is the title page. And then here it shows you the author, Joan Clifford, and the illustrator by Pat Lazzaro. Toby, the truck dispatcher, was sitting at his desk, busily doing his work, dispatching jobs to his workers and which truck they would be driving. Burp, 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 burp. The white phone rang, waiting to be answered. Hello, Toby here, what can I do for you? You would like the logging truck up at Serene Mountain as soon as possible? You have a load of logs ready for the sawmill, Toby said as he wrote down all the instructions for the job. Toby spoke to Jimmy, a new driver with the company. You are to take Lorri the Logging Truck up to Serene Mountain and pick up a load of logs for the sawmill. Once you get on the track, be very careful. It is a narrow, winding, wet road with very steep sides. Drive carefully, I don't want any accidents. Jimmy took his instructions, his work bag and the keys for Lorri the Logging Truck. Once Lorri was started, Jimmy drove carefully out of the trucking yard, onto the road and headed for the highway to take him out of town, up into the hills to Serene Mountain. Travelling along, Jimmy saw the sign he was looking for. Having turned off the highway onto a dirt road to Serene Mountain, Jimmy saw another sign pointing to Serene Mountain Logging Farm. Horror, horror, Jimmy saw what Toby told him about. A narrow, winding track up through the trees on the side of a mountain. It was raining, water lying in potholes, sharp narrow curves and some steep hills. Jimmy knew he would have to travel very slowly and carefully as it was a dangerous road. He was also hoping that no car or truck would come the other way. After 35 minutes, Jimmy and Lorri the logging truck appeared out of the trees into a large clearing. Here there was a lot of action. The tree lopper was stripping the branches, then cutting the tree off and placing the log into piles to be moved to where they could be placed on the logging trucks, like Lorri. Jimmy had to find Terry, the logging foreman. Terry's first question was, why did you come up the old logging track? Why didn't you come up the new road? Though winding, it's newer, wider and safer. Jimmy looked at his instructions, turned a little red with embarrassment and said, I failed to read that I had to find Serene Mountain Logging Farm New Road. After some more conversation with Jimmy listening very carefully, he drove Lorri the logging truck over to where the foresters could load his truck. Tying the logs down very securely, Jimmy was then on his way to take the load of logs to the sawmill. At around 6 p.m. that night, Jimmy drove Lorri the logging truck to her parking station in the trucking yard. Jimmy locked up Lorri and went wearily over to see Toby. How did it go? Toby asked. Jimmy smiled, relaxed, and told Toby the adventure of travelling the old logging truck. Finally, he said, no accidents, logs delivered, job done. That's the end of the story, and now there's got some questions like for asking you whether you listened. What was the colour of the phone? Toby answered. Right down to Jimmy took the logs to what mill? Then there's a poem here about trees. I'm going to read you this poem. The trees of the forest stood tall, and the foresters would call timber. As the trees became lumber, stripped of its branches and bark, white wood emerged from the dark. As the truck stood still, the logs were loaded for the mill. And then it just has a story about to all truck-loving children. It tells you all about the authors, how he came and wanted to write this story. And there's another one, and then at the end, there's some more of his stories that he's going to write and has written, and here's a colouring in photo for you of Lorri the truck.